Hello, friends. This is David Pasqualone, and welcome to this week's Remarkable People podcast episode with our friend Kevin Lowe. Kevin, thanks for being here today, brother.
Oh man, thank you for having me, dude. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, I am sincerely excited to have you. Ladies and gentlemen, Kevin and I have been talking the last few months. He is a contagiously positive human, and you're about to hear his story. And we all have ups, we all have downs. Sometimes we have more downs than ups, it seems, and they lasted a long time. But what I love about Kevin is he is no excuses, no, dragging his feet. He's out there, he's making things happen. He's a coach, he's an entrepreneur. He has his own podcast, the Grit, Grace, and Inspiration podcast. And I just consider him a friend, even though we've only known each other a short time. And you will be inspired when you hear this episode. You're going to see how, there's people in the world who have a lot more difficulties than you and I have, even though we may have a heavy load and they don't complain and they make things work. That's Kevin. So, Kevin, thank you for being here today.
Well, man, I'm excited to be here. I can't wait, dude. And it's a real honor to be on your show.
Oh man, it's an honor to have you. And our listeners are now like, well, what's this all about? Dave's talking about Kevin. So before we cut in, we're gonna start right off with your story, and we're gonna get into the nitty gritty of your life, the good, the bad, the ugly, the pretty, and the pretty ugly. But
Yeah,
I just wanted to give a quick shout out to My Pillow. You and I were just talking about My Pillow and how awesome their products are, but they're sponsoring today's episode, the Kevin Lowe episode. So thank you, My Pillow. And for all the ladies and gentlemen listening, I'm telling you, it's great stuff. And if you go to their website, mypillow.com, use promo code remarkable, you're going to get up to 80% off everything, all 250 plus products. You'll get 30 to 80% off everything. Most of the time, it's about 50% or more, and you are going to love it. If you don't, you can send it back, but that rarely happens because you are going to love it. You're going to tell your friends, and you're going to use promo code remarkable for years to come. So that's it. That was our quick promotion. Now let's get to the really good stuff. Kevin, talk to us about your life, buddy. Where were your origins? Where were you born? What was your family like? What was the system you grew up under?
yeah, man. Well, so I was really blessed. I had a really good childhood going back. So I born and raised here in Ormond Beach, Florida. So we are right next to the more well-known neighbor of Daytona Beach. And so life for me growing up as a kid was honestly great. It was back before, we had social media, we had cell phones and the good old days. And life for me was spent out in the woods or at the beach. I was big into riding dirt bikes. That was something that I did with my dad. Literally every holiday break from school, me and him, we would go camping at a state park over in Brooksville, Florida called Croom. And we would literally spend a week there camping and doing nothing but riding every single day. That was my love. Um, big I guess you could say a big thing happened when I turned 16. And a big thing, like most kids, is they get their first car. For me, it was my dream truck that I literally saw sitting on the side of the highway when me and my mom were headed to Publix to get groceries one day. And I seen it sitting there in this grassy lawn with a for sale sign on the window. Now, at this point, I was only 15, so I had been kind of looking, and baby, there she was. I remember I got home, I couldn't wait to tell my dad about this new truck I saw. And we looked at it. Lo and behold, she would become my sweet 16 birthday present. So that was a 90.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a 96 Ford F-150 4x4, forest green. It had 8 inches of lift with 38-inch super swampers.
Mm.
And oh man, it was my baby.
Now,
And
what length bed? Did you have the 8 foot bed or the 6 foot bed?
yeah, the 6 foot. It was a short bed.
Oh,
Yep,
short bed.
regular
Okay,
cab.
okay.
Yep, regular
Nice.
cab. Yeah. And and it was just incredible, man. That was I loved driving that truck like nobody's business. Always with the windows down, always with the radio blaring. the CB whip antenna whipping in the wind, that was it. And life, at this point, will kind of fast forward. I got my truck when I was 16 in my sophomore year. We'll fast forward to my junior year of high school. Started junior year, everything's going amazing. I had honestly finally kind of found that like core group of friends who I actually did stuff with outside of school. And things were just really going good in life. I didn't really have plans for after high school as far as college goes. I was a kid who quite honestly I hated school with a passion. And so going to college, it was something that I feel like I knew I would do, but didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do as a career path. And
Yeah, and if you
so
don't mind me interjecting, I think you
yeah,
and I are both the same age. We're in our 40s. I'm 47. How old are you?
I'm 37.
Okay. Oh, okay. So you are a little bit younger. Yeah. So we've never met. I just thought by your experience
Of
and
course. Yeah.
by your experience and poise, I thought you were older. So now I'm even more impressed with you. So no, yeah, when I was in high school, it was like almost looked down upon if you didn't go to college. But I
Mm.
remember thinking, why spend so much money when you don't even know what you want to do? But I think for you, you had a little bit less pressure. How did you feel like if you were going to go to college or not? Was there social pressure to go or not?
No, there really wasn't social pressure. I think for myself, like I just figured it would be the next step. Um, I mean, I joked we would go down on a vacation a lot down to the Florida Keys. And I had actually come up with a really great plan in my eyes, is that I was going to utilize my older sister, who's 5 years older, who she was very goal minded. She went to the University of Florida, then would transfer to another local college, get her nursing degree, and all of that. And so my plan was, hey, Tiff, I'm gonna have you support me. I'm gonna live down in the Florida Keys, fishing all day, and I'll just look for a check from you once a month in the mailbox to help support my no worries lifestyle. And that was about as far as I had gotten really making any plans. Unfortunately, Tiffany was not game for that plan. But
Yeah.
yeah.
And
So, but
probably thankfully so, or you would have been a lazy bum.
Exactly. So I guess in hindsight, when I look back at it, I'm really grateful for the fact that I didn't have this dream. Like there's some kids who they know from the time they're little that they're going to be in the army. That I mean, goodness, that was the case with my cousin. And there's other people who in high school who they really have a career path. I didn't, and I'm grateful for it because right after the start of my junior year of high school, as I said, things were going great. But underlying was I was having some medical issues. And I'll put those kind of in quotations because I don't know that we necessarily thought they were medical issues, but they were a couple of things that were concerning to my mom and my nana, my grandmother. And that was I wasn't growing. I had never gone through puberty. I was only 5'3". And the pediatrician, he just kept telling us, don't worry about it. He's just a late bloomer. It's okay. And so finally, though, my mom and my grandmother, they kind of had enough. And they they decided that yes, we have to get him to a different doctor. And so I would go to a new family doctor to Ormond Beach where I live, and left the pediatrician and went to this family doctor. And he took one look at me. He took one look at my chart, and he pulled my mom out the hallway and he said, "Listen," he said, "this isn't right." He said, "I need you to get him to an endocrinologist ASAP." That would be the first domino to fall.
Okay.
Um, the next domino to fall would be sitting in the office of the endocrinologist over in Orlando, Florida, sitting in his office, and he said the words of, "Well, I suspect that you have a brain tumor." That was just like craziness. Had never heard of such a thing and couldn't even believe that to be true. With an MRI scheduled, my mom would get the call on a Friday evening. She was, I think, headed to meet me and my stepdad and stepbrother down at our boat. We were going to take our boat up the intercoastal waterway up to St. Augustine, Florida, one of my favorite trips. We would stay at a marina at the base of the Bridge of Lions. It was just awesome. And unbeknownst to me is that my mom had got a call on her way to meet us, and it was from the endocrinologist, and he let her know that he had the office for the leading pediatric neurosurgeon on the line, that the results came back from the MRI, and it was actually worse than he ever expected. I had a plum-sized, non-cancerous brain tumor, um, basically right in the center of my head. So it had completely encased my pituitary gland. It was in the crosshairs of my optic nerve and was pressing against my carotid artery.
Mm, mm.
We would find out when we went to the first appointment with the neurosurgeon, that literally they gave me 6 months to live if this tumor was not removed. Thankfully I said that, it was non-cancerous. That was a total plus. And the neurosurgeon, he assured us, he's like, listen, he's like, I do these all the time. He's like, we'll go in. He told me, he's like, you'll be out of school for probably about 3 weeks. He told me that I had to stay off of my dirt bike and four wheeler for 6 months, which I thought was totally unacceptable. But I was going to deal with it. So that was it. Now, back up a little bit, to talking about us going up to St. Augustine, my mom ultimately decided to wait to tell me till we actually got up to the marina. And my mom says that I was sitting down in the cabin of the boat and I was flipping through a dirt bike magazine, and she walks down and sat across from me in the little booth of our boat, and that's when she told me the news. And from that point forward, the next few minutes are really just like snapshots in my memory, of me just jumping out of the boat as fast as I could, running up the dock, all the way up the stairs to the top of the marina, and then standing there with my arms folded on the railing, looking out at the marina, just lost. I mean, I never thought it would be something like a brain tumor. I mean, nobody ever thinks that it's going to be something tragic, something major like that. And I didn't even realize the severity of the situation. Just knowing a brain tumor was scary enough.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that was how I found out. Um, Everything happened really quick. Like I said, we got that appointment with the pediatric neurosurgeon, and in his office that day, when he was telling us about the surgery, how it would all work, he, had to go over all the possible risks involved with the surgery, which is ridiculous. And I always say, it's like, oh, we got like such and such percentage, we're going to cut off your arm even though we're messing with your head. Well, at the
Yeah,
end
and
of
you and
the
I, ladies and gentlemen, just so you know, Kevin and I don't normally talk to guests off camera because I want our conversations like this to be totally organic and we're all in a room together just as friends. But Kevin and I have talked extensively about this because we had a lot of overlap and similarities in our life. So, Kevin, you're doing an amazing job explaining it. And
yeah,
ladies and gentlemen, again, once you see where he's been, it's not how we start life, it's how we finish. It's going to be super inspiring and it's going to give us no excuse not to keep going and work even harder in a good way. So, Kevin, keep on going, man. I just want to
yeah.
throw that in there. So, if you're hearing me laugh, I'm not laughing at Kevin, I'm laughing at the commonality in our stories.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So we get done with that appointment. The surgery date is set, and now at the time, I'm a guy with a sense of humor, and so I immediately named my tumor. I named my tumor Bob the tumor, and
Nice.
and so me and my family, we had a going away Bob party. And so literally all the family friends got together before surgery and stuff and had a big, huge party at my aunt and uncle's house. And because, as scary as it was, we also finally found the answer to all these questions of why I had migraine headaches every day of my life, why I wasn't growing, why I drank more than any human possible. I literally would drink and drink and drink. And that was because all of what the tumor was doing to my pituitary gland, where it crashed like my thirst hormone. And I had all these things. And so it was finally an answer to all of that. Plus, I got to drop out of trigonometry, and, which was like another like total bonus. And so everything was great. And that was the exact mindset going into surgery on the morning of October 28th, 2003. Doctor shows up. I had checked into the hospital the day before. All my family was there by that night. Everybody was piled into my hospital room. We had gotten Outback Steakhouse takeout is what I wanted for dinner that night. Um, and it was great. My whole family was there, both my mom's side of the family and my dad's side of the family. And my mom and dad, they divorced when I was little, only in like second grade. And yet when things matter, there's as if there's no separation in our family. And this was one of those situations. The morning happens, the morning comes, the doctor walks in. My mom says I crack a joke of, I hope you ate your Wheaties. And he's, ready to go. And I remember being wheeled in the bed to the operating room. And I remember my mom and dad walked with me, and they had to say goodbye right as I went through the double doors into the OR. And man, if I knew then what I know now, I don't think I could have stopped staring at their faces, because everything changed once I went into the operating room. The doctor came out hours later, told my family that the surgery was a success, that everything went great, that they removed the tumor. He said everything was good. Um, I remained in the pediatric ICU though. Things were not going as we thought it would go. Apparently I was extremely combative, had all these different type of endocrine levels going haywire. It literally took my entire family, who would take shifts of literally like 15 minutes, four people at a time, to just keep me, because they said I kept trying to pull out all the cords and rip off the pulse ox machine and try and pull out the ports and the drains and all this stuff. And they didn't want the hospital staff to strap me down. And so my family would stay in there in shifts and help take care of me. And
Yeah, and then there's also other concerns there too, because you just had major surgery. You could bleed out, the pressure
exactly,
difference. Yeah, there was
exactly,
a lot of
exactly.
complications there.
Yeah, there was a lot going on. And it was soon after, I'm not sure exactly, it was, always forget if it was like 1 day or 3 days after surgery. My mom happened to be in there, in the room with me. It was just her and the head nurse. And I kept yanking off the little pulse ox machine off my toe. And the nurse, he was like, Kevin, he's like, you got to stop taking this off. And he's like, do you see this red light? Apparently, there was a blinking red light on the pulse ox machine. He's like, Kevin, do you see this red light? He's like, you don't take this off. He's like, "Do you see the light?" And I said, "No, no, I don't see anything." And when I said that, he looked at my mom. My mom looked at him. He walked over and he turned on the light switch. He turned it on and off, on and off. He's like, "Kevin, do you see this light?" And I said, "No, no, it's just black. It's just black." It was at that moment that they found out that I was left completely blind.
Mm.
So, no shapes, no shadows, no light, no dark, completely blind. I also lost my ability to smell. I had short term memory loss that lasted a solid 6 months. I had all these medical issues related to no longer having a pituitary gland that now, 20 years later, I still deal with every single day. And that was the new reality that we are plunged into. And I will tell you, for a long time, I would describe it as a world of darkness because that's how it felt for a very long time. And it was the most horrific experience that I could have ever imagined. But I got through it. And my family, I don't remember any of the time after rolling through the operating room. My memory doesn't pick up till a long time later after being back at home. I don't have any memory of the 2 weeks spent in the ICU, coming home. I don't have memory of any of that. Um, but my family will tell you, my mom will tell you that in the hospital and even after coming home, that I always said that God was with me. And one night, my mom, she said that she asked me in the morning, she said, "Kevin," she's like, "each night when you go to bed, I hear you talking." She's like, "Who are you talking to?" And I told her, "Jesus, that he's always there with me." And to this day, when anybody ever asks how I've done it, I say I've only done it through two things. One is my faith, the other is my family. Those two things combined are what have gotten me through literally just a living hell to finally finding joy again in this world, even if I can't see it.
Man. Now, when you're at any age and you lose your sight and you have that kind of trauma, it's absolutely normal to lose memory, right?
Yes.
And you were there, and in the moment you were conscious and you had your faith and you had your family and you had Jesus, and you can have peace and joy.
Yes.
But the day to day can still be a trial. Talk
Yeah.
us through from those moments where you woke up and and you're realizing, wow, this is real. I am now blind. And how did you acclimate and work us through the process to where you are today, the man, Kevin?
Yeah. Um, the first part I would say is what I call going through the motions. Um, every night when I went to bed, I would beg, I would cry at God, asking Him to let me see when I woke up the next morning. I literally would just sob in my pillow every single night, begging Him to just take away it and let me wake up in the morning and let me see again. And yet, every single morning, I'd wake up and I'd open my eyes and I'd see the same thing that I did when they were closed. And yet, I still would get up. I would still be laughing and smiling and helping my family get through it as much as I was getting through it. I had so many health issues apart from being blind that it was just literally survival mode for a long time of just literally balancing out all these new medications that I've got to start taking. Um, my mom would drop me off at my nana's house every morning, kind of like felt like back when I was a little kid. I never returned to school the rest of my junior year of high school. Every day, like I said, my mom would go to work, she'd drop me off at Nana's, and I spent the day with Nana. And Nana would do her best. She was incredible of helping me to keep me active, to keep me engaged, because I would sleep a lot. And they at one point were trying to get it where I wasn't sleeping so much. And so she would try her best to try and keep me engaged, and she always tried to keep me laughing. And eventually we would get to a point where I had a um, small group, three different teachers through a program called Hospital Homebound, who they would come to my nana's house each day during the week. And I had one teacher who taught me my school subjects, and another teacher who taught me what I called blind stuff, which I was not real thrilled about, which was like reading braille and learning how to use a talking computer. And then the third teacher taught me mobility skills, how to use a white cane to get around. Um, Going through the motions. Now, from a personal perspective, I fully believed that I would see again. Everything is fixable. There's a fix for everything. There's a research study going on in China. There's people here in our own country doing different experiments. There's stem cell. There's going to be something that's going to let me see again. And I was buying time until that day happened. And that's how I lived my life for years. It took probably 10 years, 10 years before I finally said to myself that, you know what? I believe in all my heart that I'm going to see again, but it might not be till I'm in heaven. And that's okay, because right now I have more life to live. And that wouldn't happen though for 10 years later. Now, in the time in between that, a lot happened. I caught up with my schoolwork. I made it back to school for the start of my senior year, because this was something that I forgot to mention. As I told you earlier, I was a kid who hated school, totally hated school. And yet,
Mhm.
for some reason, I kept saying after surgery, I just want to be able to still graduate with my class. I just want to be able to graduate with my class. Why? Why did I have that? Where did that even come from? Why would that even matter? I mean, if you are honest, I got handed the kind of get out of school free card. And yet that was my goal. And so I caught up with the schoolwork, made it back to Seabreeze High School for the start of my senior year. That was rough. I just went back for one class a day. And then the rest I did back at home with those same teachers and my nana. But I wanted to do it because I wanted to be able to take part in my senior year. Now, it was way tougher than I realized it would be, because yeah, I was there, but I wasn't able to walk over and hang out with the group of kids who I always did. No, now I'm have an aide who's helping me just get to class. Um I got to be in there and I got to see kids living the life that I was supposed to be living. And yet God had this happen to me, and I didn't understand why he would do that to me. But I kept going. And eventually the year would end, and I would walk across the stage of my high school graduation, class of 2005, and I got my diploma with my class. I did it. And it wasn't till years and years later that I realized why. When I said I didn't understand why would I even want to do that? And I thought right then that that was all God, because God wanted to show me right off the bat that, Kevin, even in this new world, you are able to do great things. And he wanted to show me immediately that this is not going to stop you from living your life.
Amen. And how old were you when you had that moment again?
When I had the
That moment where you realize this isn't going to stop you. Life is going to go on.
um 10 years later, so probably somewhere around 27.
Yeah.
It took, and that was the thing, man, is I was fortunate that here where I live in Daytona Beach, there's unbeknownst to us, there's a huge blind population, because we have like the world's largest braille book library right near like our community college. We have a Center for the Visually Impaired, Division of Blind Services, all these different organizations. And I was assigned a counselor with, I think, like the Division of Blind Services, and they were involved when I went back to school and all of that. And I remember though that they kept telling mostly my mom, my nana, that Kevin needs to accept what has happened and move on. He needs to accept this. And I remember that would make me so furious. So furious. But Kevin does things in Kevin's own time. I've always been like that. And it took me time. But eventually I came to that point where I could, as I said, learn to love this life again, just in a whole new way.
Yeah. And I think thankfully most people haven't been critically ill or they haven't had such a traumatic, life-changing circumstance like going blind. And ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening to what Kevin's saying, think through when you have a cold. If you have like a 24-hour cold, you're like, whatever, you get better. When you get the flu or something for a week or two, and you're like, man, I'm just tired of being in bed, and you're exhausted and you don't feel good, and then you start kind of getting a bad attitude, right? Because you're tired. And any human, when they're tired, their attitude's not as good, and or it's more of a struggle. They have to put more energy into having a positive outlook, right? Well, then if you've ever had any long-term pain or illness, it's just hard to stay positive in the right mindset because one little trigger can throw you back. So Kevin is in his life right now, and Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, but you not only had the trauma of going blind and a whole world life shift, but you also have major medical issues because when you have a major surgery, it takes months, if not, sometimes years to recover for your body to when they cut out chunks of your flesh, ladies and gentlemen, especially inside your head, your body has to reroute all that. And it does it quick. God's amazing how he made our bodies, but there's still an acclimation. Like you're not used to it. Then your body has to regenerate and heal. And, it takes sometimes up to 7 years to have a complete cycle of your body to heal. And so Kevin's going through emotional, physical, spiritual. His body's regenerating. He's learning, like he said, three different areas of life with multiple aspects within each life. And your body's taking a beating, your mind's taking a beating, your just every part of you is taking a beating. However, you had your faith, you had your family, and you made it through. So before we go any further, even if it's reflecting, hindsight's 2020. For the people who are listening right now, Kevin, going through similar trials, or who they're watching their family member go through, or a friend, or maybe they have a child that this surgery is about to take place, what kind of advice do you have for them to say, hey, these were some of the catalysts that worked for me to help at least start the process of healing?
Yeah. Well, I think the answer is different for whatever stage they're in. For somebody who is maybe at the beginning where they've just found out that they've got to have some type of massive surgery. Um, I honestly think the only thing that any of us can do is we do our due diligence, we find the best doctors, and we pray. Because sorry. Is we pray about it, about what's to come, because we have to do it. Just like I had to have that surgery. For anybody who's in the midst of life's hard times, and this could be anything imaginable, not just some type of life-shattering moment, but anything that has you in the midst of the hard times of life, and you feel like there's no way out. Is I created an equation for myself back then, which is kind of funny. Again, a kid who didn't like school, and yet I come up with a math equation. And that math equation became my motto. And that was faith plus family equals a life worth living. And so I encourage you, if you're going through hard times right now and you feel like you have no reason to get up tomorrow morning, I want you to find out what that reason is, because I guarantee you that there is something that you love, something that you're passionate about, something that is worth you thriving in life. And I recommend that you figure out what that one thing is, two things, three things, and you keep that at the core. So when you wake up and life is unfair and nothing is right, and you want no more than to just crawl back up in bed and sleep the day away, I want you to remember your base. Your base is that equation. If you have nothing else to live for, you have that to live for. For myself, I was lucky I had two things. I had my family and I had my faith. And those two things got me through literally the worst times of all of this. I mean, there were times when I would lay in bed at night and I would beg God to give me the courage to kill myself, because I wanted nothing more than to be out of this world. And yet, I never did. I never even tried. I never took it another step forward. Why? Well, that was because I always came back to my family. And I thought, if I do that, what is that going to do to my mom? What is that going to do to my sister, my dad, my grandparents? Maybe I'm out of the misery, but I made it even worse for them. And so it was through my faith and because of my family that I kept going. And that is why I always encourage anyone, everyone, to figure out what your base is and to hold that true to your heart in the good times and the bad.
Amen. So let's continue with your story now. So you're getting training, obviously a major life switch. You're starting to see that, okay, I have a purpose, and I may not even be clear on exactly what it is, but God's not vindictive. He loves me. He didn't cause pain, He doesn't cause sin, but He's allowing this to happen because there's a good reason. So, where does your life go from there, Kevin? Take us from there to today.
Yeah, absolutely. So it really picks up with something that I called at the time blind daycare. And they called it a job readiness program. I called it blind daycare because I would go to one of our Center for the Visually Impaired. They had a job readiness program. And this was, oh my goodness, let's say probably about 8 years after going blind. So it'd been a good little bit. I had been going to different classes at the blind center, getting help on different stuff. But this was the first thing to really maybe propel me forward. And so it was a 3 month long program that was designed to help you really kind of get into a profession. And so when they asked me, what areas I was interested in, I said travel and radio. And so at the end of this program, they set me up with an internship at a local travel agency and at a local AM radio station.
Nice.
Yeah. And so I loved working in the radio station like nobody's business. I worked on the morning drive. So my grandfather, my papa actually worked right near the radio station. And so he would pick me up from my house super early in the morning. I had to be there by 6 a.m. And so he'd pick me up and drop me off at the radio station 3 mornings a week. And I would be in the studio with the guys and just being part of the show, talking about local issues and all of that from 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock. I loved it, dude. I loved it. At the travel agency, I loved it also. Amazing couple who owned this small travel agency, and I got to learn about the industry. I got to understand what it was like to be a travel agent. And the reason I did that, I'll explain, is travel was something that I loved doing all growing up. And I was blessed to get to see all corners of this world. But I realized after going blind that I love to travel even more because when you're blind, I mean, you can only get so much enjoyment of listening to a travel show on the TV. You want to be there. And so I realized the power of it. Lo and behold, we'll fast forward to January 2013. And that was me opening my own home-based travel agency called Better Days Travel. Unfortunately, both of those internships didn't go anywhere once they were over with. And so I kind of felt like I was back at, square zero. And that's when my sister, doing some research, found the idea of me becoming a home-based travel agent. And that's when I started that. I opened my own company. As I said, it was called Better Days Travel. And that was really powerful for me because it was something that gave me purpose. It was something that I was excited about. I got to build a brand. I got to build a company. I got to learn how to be a travel agent. And I had a reason to keep focused, to get up every morning, excited and keep moving forward. And so I had my own travel agency that I did up until 2020. And it was just it was great. And 2020 was going to be my best year ever. Um I had oh my goodness, I even did a full cruise cuz 2020 was going to be my 17th anniversary of when I went blind. Now, for myself, being Mr. Positive, I thought, well, how cool is that? 17 years sighted, 17 years blind. That sounds like a reason for a cruise. And so I set up
Nice.
a I set up a big cruise for me and my whole family. And then, literally it was going to be my best year ever as a travel agent. And then 2020 happened, March came, and it all disappeared. And literally inside of a week, every trip canceled, and I was just done. Um, Now I'll back up real quick because one important part of my story is happened in 2017. And that was I learned about the skill of echolocation. Now, up until 2017, learning about echolocation, I only learned to get around with the use of my cane. I only could see what my cane could touch or what my hands touch. Well, I learned about this guy named Brian Bushway, who at the time worked for an organization where they would travel around the world teaching blind people how to use echolocation, how to see through echolocation. Lo and behold, long story short, I would find myself traveling out to Los Angeles, California with my mom and sister the summer of 2017 to train one on one with the guy Brian on developing this skill of echolocation, the same thing that bats or dolphins do. A lot of people thought it was crazy, totally skeptical, thought I was totally getting rooked on this whole thing. But dude, it was life changing. I spent each day working with Brian just at his home or at our Airbnb apartment or just out in the neighborhood. And I was developing a clicking technique where you do a little snapping noise with your tongue against the roof of your mouth. And by day 3, I had retrained my brain's visual cortex to now see through sound. Because
That's amazing.
inside of the Airbnb apartment, I'm working. My mom and sister, they would go out every day doing tourist stuff while I'm training. Me and Brian were working in the apartment, and up until this day, I'm not getting nothing. I can barely make the clicking noise. He's telling me I should be seeing stuff that I don't see. It was very frustrating. Day 3, though, it all came together. All of a sudden, doing an exercise, I could see the wall. Literally, all of a sudden, from a world that was nothing but blackness, I see this fuzzy gray that's the wall. And I could walk up to it doing my little clicking technique. And I could walk right up to the wall and stop without running into it. I then
Mm.
turned, walked down the wall, and all of a sudden I see this dark, deep opening. Well, that was the doorway leading into the kitchen. That, my friend, was a game changer. Since that day, my life is no longer black. It's no longer do I feel like I live in a world of darkness, because now my world has dimension. Everything has a shape. Because with this echolocation, I literally can see the surroundings around me. It's not like I used to see. We call it, an acoustic image, but I always think it's cool. Like, walking up to a car, I can see the shape of the car. Everything has a different sound profile. So furniture that is soft, it has a different look to it versus, a metal object that, looks totally different. But I literally learned to see again only through sound. And I can remember on that third day, the night of that third day, which, as I say, was the most transformational day in my life. I remember laying in bed that night, going to sleep. And I remember praying, and all of a sudden it kind of hit me. And I just started laughing. And I said, God, I said, you finally let me see again, just in a whole new way. And that was pretty darn amazing.
Yeah, I
and
can't even imagine. It's like, we watch superhero movies and read comic books, and the first thing I thought of was Daredevil. He sees in
Yes.
this type of echolocation. He's got his $1 billion helmet, but you're doing it based on this man's teaching. And his name was Brian what?
Yeah, Brian Bushway.
Brian Bushway. And how did he learn this? Did he
So
just
he
figure it out?
No, so he learned it. So he went blind when he was around, I think, 14 years old. And he was at a blind school out in California and met a guy named Daniel Kish. Now, Daniel Kish, he is kind of like the I would say like the head guy of this whole idea of echolocation. And so Brian actually would work for a long time with him in an organization that they had. Brian's no longer a part of the organization. He went and is done doing different things. But they would literally travel all over the world and teach groups of blind people how to use this technique. And it's fascinating. And what's crazy about it is that the blind centers around where I live, and in most of them that I'm aware of, they do not teach this technique. Most of them, when you mention it, they almost act like it's a scam. And I I remember when I finally had it happen, I remember honestly being really upset because I thought to myself, I just spent 14 years at all these blind centers, at these blind schools, going to different blind conventions. Nobody ever once told me about this. Why aren't we teaching more people how to do this? And it literally is a game changer.
Let me ask you a question then. So, there's certain things that 10 people could try it and not everybody's going to get it because they don't stick with it. Or maybe it's just not in their ability range. From what you've seen and experienced, Kevin, if you took 100 students, we'll make the math easier, and they all went through this kind of training, how many of them would be able to see this way, do you think? And how many of them would walk away frustrated, like, oh, crap, that didn't work. It was false hope.
I don't know. I don't know what statistics are on it. But I do know that, I've heard people talk about it, others, and they'll say that typically, and ironically, that's how long it took for me was 3 days. And they even say that they could train somebody who's sighted if you put on a blindfold, and we're completely, blindfolded, 3 days after this training, you'd be able to learn how to do it too. And so I think it's something, I mean, that should be able to be taught to anybody who's able to make a clicking noise with their tongue and are able to hear with their ears to, hear that echo bouncing back at them. So yeah, it is incredible.
Now, have you had anyone that you met that you recommended and they've been able to pick up the same ability?
No, I haven't ever even had that opportunity.
I just didn't know with your circles and with what you do, if you ran into any other people who were blind that you could refer them and to see how they turned out. So that,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
maybe somebody listening to this will be able to connect. Now, is it something that's in person only? Are there online courses to teach it? How does that work? Like, do you teach this now to other people?
I no, I don't. I'm not definitely not an instructor in it. I honestly don't know who would teach it. I would recommend, if anybody is listening and they're interested, to, definitely reach out to me, and I will be able to figure out, through my friend Brian, me and him become really good friends, and who I could recommend them, to go to.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, and also if you send it to us, this episode's evergreen. So whether it's tomorrow or whether it's next year, if people are listening, as soon as you get the information, I'll put in the show notes, Kevin, so people can just click on the show notes and go. So that
Yeah,
way
perfect.
they can get going. So okay, so now you meet this guy and you're becoming the daredevil, right?
Yes,
And you're like literally now seeing through sonar in a
yes,
way which most humans would say isn't even possible.
exactly.
Where does your life go from there? It's a new world, right?
It is. It it gave me so much more confidence. I mean, I still use a cane, um, but I now have this, is we like to describe it, is it's another tool in my toolbox to make this sighted world a little bit easier for me to navigate. And I mean, it's as simple as, I'll give you a totally just normal application. I go out in my driveway to get the garbage can after the garbage men came. Used to, I'd walk down the driveway and I'd use my cane, swinging the cane around till I hit the garbage can. Now I walk down the driveway, and with a couple of clicks, I see the garbage can and I walk over and I grab it. And so yeah, it's amazing. So definite life changer. Um, And so, I mean, it has totally impacted that, just the confidence of just living in this world. As I said, it just makes things a little bit easier. And I'll jump back now kind of to the other realm. I was on the timeline talking about the travel agency. But I just wanted to jump back and touch on the 2017 learning echolocation. But back up now to 2020, when we are all in the pandemic, my travel agency has totally just fallen apart. And that is when, unbeknownst to me, I began a new direction in life. And that was me starting up a podcast in May of 2020. Now, funny enough, is that my original plan was to start a YouTube channel. And that's what I was really excited about. I thought, ooh, perfect opportunity. We're in quarantine. I'll start the YouTube channel I've been thinking about. So I start ordering different stuff off Amazon until all of a sudden, dude, it hits me one day like a ton of bricks. Kevin, if you don't have somebody here who can film you, can edit the film, what are you going to do? And I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And so at that moment, I was like crushed. And again, my sister, awesome sister, who discovered the idea of the home based travel agency years earlier, she now tells me about this idea of starting a podcast. My response is, what the heck is a podcast? She tells me, and my response is, well, that's a pretty lame alternative to a YouTube channel. and, but upon further exploring of the idea, I realized, man, I just found my jam, the world of audio. And so I began my podcast. Originally, it was called The Lowdown on Life and Travel. The Lowdown, kind of a play on my last name. And I, at the time, still thought I was going to be a travel agent. And so the podcast was focusing on travel related content and how I'm able to be a travel agent, even though I'm blind, and how I travel and all of that. And so I did that with the podcast. That's how I got my feet wet with it. And man, before I knew it, the podcast took over my life. Um, I I literally, dude, it was the most natural evolution I've ever experienced because it just started flowing. It started evolving. The conversation started veering away from travel and getting into people's, stories of overcoming stuff. And so I would end up rebranding the podcast two more times. So it started out as the Lowdown on Life and Travel, then it became the Lowdown with Kevin Lowe as I really switched gears, and then as I really wanted to make it something unique and getting in on the more descriptive words, I rebranded it as Great Grace and Inspiration. And man, the podcast is my opportunity to finally let the rest of the sighted world know what it's like to see somebody only based on their voice, in which they only see them based on the stories that the person shares, the tone in their voice, the emotion. Because I've often said that I feel like I see so much more of this world and of people than the people who can see. It's unbelievable to me on the stuff that I pick up on and that others totally miss. And so through the podcast, I feel like it's a beautiful opportunity to get to do that. And that literally, man, is just brought me up. I mean, time has flown by. And an important lesson, I think, in all of this is I learned something very, very important with the podcast is that a lot of times you wonder, are we going in the right direction in life? Sometimes we're not so sure. Well, I realized something important is that you know how you're going in the right direction when it feels effortless. As a travel agent, I worked at it. I enjoyed it, but baby, I worked at it. I constantly paddled my boat along. When I started in the podcast, it was like I started floating on my back and floating on down the stream. And I realized then that I don't know where this river is taking me, but I know it feels right. And I'm just going to keep following it and see where it leads. And lo and behold, now we're, gosh, coming up on almost 4 years later. Now coaching in addition to the podcast. And oh man, just amazing stuff. With one of the biggest gifts being the opportunity to meet people like yourself, who I always say that if it wasn't for the podcast, I would have never even known these people existed. And yet now I get to sit down with somebody and just talk with them and to hear their story and get to know people and from all over the world. And I think, how awesome is that?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And it's, man, so one thing I'm thinking as a podcaster, I laughed right off the bat because you said, "What's a podcast?" That was what happened to me 4 years. It's like God's telling me to start a interview people. I'm like, interview people? I don't ever interview anybody. I've never interviewed anybody in my life. And then it's like, start a podcast. I'm like, what's a podcast, right? But there are so many steps and there's so much work involved in podcasting. And I do it with conventional sight. I
Yeah.
can't even imagine trying to do audio editing even and communicating with guests and clients and building a website. And ladies and gentlemen, check out Kevin's podcast, his artwork, his website. It's all first class. You do such a great job. So, do you have people help you, or do you do it all yourself with the audio reader?
Yeah, so I do as much as I can by myself, but when it comes to visual elements, I have an amazing web designer who I actually worked with back when I had my travel agency. And so I still work with her today. As I tell her, I always apologize. I say, I know I'm the pickiest damn blind person there is, but I just need you to change this or I need you to change that. And so I work with her, and I'm really able to do most things all myself. In relation to the podcast itself, I knew really quickly that editing was going to be a problem. And so I went on to Fiverr and I found an editor. And matter of fact, I still work with that editor today, almost 4 years later. And so she, is somebody who is just amazing. We've built an amazing partnership together where I can, record my stuff and then send it to her to edit. But technology is amazing. And even since I went blind, the advancements in assistive technology are incredible. So I have my normal laptop computer, but I have a program called JAWS installed on it. And they call it a screen reader. And so basically, I can do everything on the computer that anybody else can do. But instead of using the mouse, I'm just using keystroke commands. And as I'm typing or doing these keystroke commands, this program is talking. And so I'm navigating it to read different elements of the web page, or as I'm typing in a Word document, it's telling the letters and the words that I'm typing. And I can go back and read stuff. It's an incredible software program that literally has made all of this possible.
Man, so we're living in a day and time where the technology's there. You have a coaching business, a podcast. Where are you today if we missed anything, Kevin? And where are you heading next? How can we, as a remarkable community, help Kevin get to his next destination since you've been so kind to help us today?
Oh man, thank you so much, dude. My biggest thing right now, man, is I just want to be sure that I'm helping as many people as I can possibly help. Because I realize that there's so many people who are hurting, who are going through stuff. And I just want to be able to be that voice to remind them to not give up, to keep going. And whether it's through the podcast to inspire them, whether it's through coaching to empower them, I just want to be there to propel them forward, to remind them, that that this life is worth living and to give them another little boost to get them there. Um, that's my whole mission. Yeah, man, I would just love it if anybody who was into the podcast checked out Great Grace and Inspiration. And I also, man, if it's cool if I announce it, I have a really cool personal development tracker that I'd love to tell people how they could get that if that's cool.
Yeah, 100%, man.
Yeah, so I created a really cool, I think it's really cool anyways, a personal development tracker that is called a Rise and Thrive personal development tracker. It's a neat way to kind of gamify the idea of becoming the best version of you. And so it's just in Google Docs or Microsoft Excel. And it's a fun way to keep track of the different things you're doing throughout the day. There's 14 different activities. Each one has a point value. And you try to beat your score. Try to see what your score is today versus tomorrow. And if that sounds like your kind of deal, well, I made it super easy. And you can text the word RISE, RISE, to the phone number 33777. Again, just text the word RISE to 33777.
Nice. That I think that will be something we can all check out and really enjoy and thrive from. So thank you so much, Kevin.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. I don't want to skip anything between your birth and today, but I consider you, you know, you're positive, you're encouraging, you're inspiring, and you have downtime too. Everybody, especially people
Mm-hmm.
who are strong and leaders and they help inspire others, they usually had to go to real dark places to get that kind of outlook on life. So is there anything else we can do to encourage you? We can check out the app, we can check out your website, we can check out your podcast. That all is simple, right, ladies and gentlemen? But that's super encouraging for a podcaster to see their numbers grow, that people are being affected positively, and then reach out and shoot Kevin an email and just say, hey, man, this really helped. Thank you. I've had, and I'm sure you have too, Kevin, you just hear one quote and it literally changes your life because it reprograms your thinking, correct?
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. So, is there anything we can do for you to help you on your journey besides what we talked about, beside in prayer? But is there anything
Yeah.
else we can do to help you, Kevin?
Yeah, I the biggest thing honestly is whether it's you listening today or maybe you know somebody in your life who is struggling, who's having a hard time, who you keep thinking of ways in which you wish you could help them. I would love it if you would tell them about my podcast. I share every week the stories of people just like you or me or them who are who have been through the hard times in life and they've gotten through it. And I feel like when we're down, we need to hear those stories of people who've been right there where we are. And we need to know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And so my biggest thing is please share my podcast, Grit, Grace, and Inspiration with that person. That honestly would be the biggest thing that I would ask anybody to do.
Awesome. And we will do that, my friend. Um, if you don't mind me asking, I'm intrigued with the echolocation. I think no, it's just because God made us so amazing and we use so little of the gifts He's given us. And when you see with this echolocation, are there colors involved or is it just shades of gray?
Yeah, good question. Good question. No color. So it is all shades of gray, black. So think of so everything has a different what we call kind of acoustic definition or acoustic quality. So things that are soft, like if I am somewhere in, let's say there's a cloth sofa. When I do a click, I can see the shape of the sofa, but it's not real super defined. And it's more just kind of like we'll say like a fuzzy kind of gray color. Versus if I walk into a public restroom and I'm trying to find the sync. I'll do a couple of clicks and I will get what I describe as a ping. And I describe the ping as like, those commercials for maybe it's for like a dishwasher detergent and it shows the little shine coming off of like a wine glass.
Yeah.
That's how I describe like a metal faucet is when I do the click, I'll get a little ping off of the metal surface.
Nice.
And so there I know that is there. And then I mean it's even as wild as I mean like the other day I was shopping with my mom and sister. We were in Walmart and sometimes the echolocation even works when I'm not actively making the clicking technique. It's just other noises around me. And I remember walking and I remember just looking off to my right for some reason. And it was so funny because I saw my mom. I could just see her figure, this black like figure of her. And it's always so funny when stuff like that happens. And it's really, really remarkable.
Yeah, no, I don't know why. Your story is so inspiring, but that intrigues me to a totally different part of my brain. And then also, do you see motion or do you see still images?
Um, uh, no, I guess I'm trying to think. I mean,
Or is it so many still images coming back fast that it's almost like a when you're flipping through a book, it's like an old cartoon reel. 24
yeah,
frames
like,
per
well,
second
like,
makes a video.
yeah, well, I mean, like, for example, like, I'm not gonna see through echolocation like a baseball being thrown through the air, or even like a car, driving by. I mean, I'm gonna pick up more on that, just literally just the noise of the car driving by, than really being able to echolocate like something truly in motion. I've honestly never really thought about that so much before. So I can't tell you exactly, but I would think that would be pretty hard.
Yeah. No, I was just wondering. I didn't know. I
Yeah.
was just trying to see how it
Yeah.
worked. There's probably moms and dads listening now and their kid is blind and they're like, they don't want to believe something and be disappointed. But
Yeah.
at the same time, if there's hope, what parent wouldn't do anything they could for their kids or even for yourself? And that's
Yeah.
why I was like, if this was your kid, is this something you'd invest in paying for them to try to get
Yes.
their sight through certain location?
Yeah. And I want to tell you a really cool way to make this all come back home where everybody can understand exactly what I'm talking about with echolocation. Have you ever been driving in the car before and you have the windows down and you can hear every time you pass by like a tree or a mailbox? You know what
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
talking about? That is
Yeah.
echolocation. That is the sound of the car bouncing off of that object. Now, of course, you're not seeing the shape of it, but that is the power of an echo, of echolocation bouncing back off of that object, which I always think is a cool way to tell somebody. I will tell you that the skill is even something that I actually started picking up without realizing it before I even went out to do the training. And that I remember walking down a plaza one day with my mom, and it was a shopping plaza. We're walking down the front sidewalk, which is covered. And just from the sound of our footsteps, all of a sudden I realized every time we passed a column, I could see it. This dark object, I could tell we were passing by. And I remember asking my instructor, and he's like, "Yeah," he's like, "That's just literally, a passive form of echolocation that your brain was already beginning to adopt." So yeah, and so then with this, we just take it from passive to active, where we're making that echo with the clicking noise of my tongue, to see the stuff around me.
Nice. Well, and then how often do you click? Is it like one click? Is it 10 clicks? Like how do you get that image?
Um, I
Like you
mean,
come to my condo, you come up to Pensacola, you visit, you walk in my condo, you don't want to run into anything, so you click. How many
yeah,
times do you click to see around?
yeah. I mean, I'm clicking just uh I don't know, a few times. I mean, it's not like a machine gun clicking noise, but I'm clicking, in a new environment like that. Yeah, I mean, I'm clicking, I don't know, every few seconds or so, I guess. Yeah,
Yeah, and I
I
don't
mean,
wanna bombard you with questions. So
no,
you're right.
no,
This is,
no, no.
like, something that to me is so hopeful, and your
Oh,
life is
yes.
inspiring, and you're motivating, and this is just one piece of it, which I know you didn't even like you said, it's not even your thing, you just learned it from some but, ladies and gentlemen, check out the show notes, check out Kevin's podcast, check out his website, reach out to him to continue the conversation. And I really thank you for being here, Kevin, because to me, it's like you have a positive attitude. You're not making excuses. You're adapting and overcoming. You're Christ-like in the sense of, you're moving forward despite the circumstances and you're making things happen. And I think that's what we're all supposed to be. So thank you for being a positive influence and, not crawling in bed and crying. We all have those moments, but you're living in the moving forward. So thank you for being a great example and encouragement.
Oh man, I appreciate it so much. It means the world to me, and honest to goodness, dude, I just appreciate you for giving me the opportunity to even be here today to share my story. Sharing my story, my testimony, man, it's something that I'm truly passionate about, and sharing the good times and the bad. With all this, just hope that I say that I've come to a point in my life when I realize that if something I can say can help somebody else, then I have to believe that all of this that I've gone through has been worth it.
Yeah, 100%. And like you said, even at one point, you were talking about having the quote unquote courage to commit suicide, where Satan will try to trick us into so many different thoughts and make
Mm,
things sound reasonable. And, suicide's a permanent solution
yep.
for a temporary problem.
Yes, exactly.
So if you're out there thinking of suicide, get that crap out of your head right now. If
Yep.
someone has Kevin has been in low places, I've been in low places and agony for not just days or weeks or months, but years. And I'm not saying everything's going to turn out great. I can't promise that. But God loves you. He's not vindictive. Satan's the bastard who causes all the pain, all the torment, all the hardships. And if you're still alive, it's because you have a special purpose. And it's not God torturing you, it's God has a plan for you. So don't ever commit suicide or think that. And I'm not saying it can't get tough. Kevin will say the same thing. Yeah, there's low moments, dark moments, hard moments, but suicide's never the solution. That's just a satanic thought he's trying to plant in you. So make sure you go to God. Like Kevin talked about his faith many times, God's always there for you, even if everybody else has left us. So just cling to him and know that this is a short life. And when it's over in his time, you're going to be in eternity with God if you've trusted him as your savior by faith. So, Kevin, I appreciate you, man. Any final thoughts to our listeners before we wrap it up for today?
Just with what you were saying, I think the thing that I just wanted to share is to remember the big picture about life is that sometimes we get so just overwhelmed with what we're going through right now. But if we look at life like a big picture, like a car cruising down the interstate, the troubles, even the big ones, in the grand scheme of things, they're just a bump in the road. And so if you can just picture yourself driving down the highway and that the problem you're dealing with today is just a bump in the road, a bump, and then you keep cruising, keep your eye focused forward, and then whew, just the future is there for you.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing. It seems like forever, but it's really just a quick bump in the road, and you have a cross country trip, and that's just one split second, right?
Yep, exactly.
Awesome. Well, Kevin, thanks for hanging out with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, like our slogan says, don't just listen to the great content Kevin brought, but do it, repeat it each day so you can have a great life in this world, but most importantly, in eternity to come. So I'm David Pasqualone. This is our remarkable friend and brother, Kevin Lowe. Kevin, thank you again for being here. And ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you in the next episode. Ciao.